Today we are going to make the beef and cabbage recipe that's in the Optavia app. And of course, it would not be a recipe of mine if I didn't do just one minor little tweak to it. So let's make beef and cabbage. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Elizabeth and I am living in the light by documenting my weight loss journey using Optavia's 5-in-1 program. Doesn't matter what weight loss program you're on, whether it is Optavia, keto, Weight Watchers, Whole30, this is an awesome recipe that anybody can make, and in the description box down below, I will have a complete description of all of the items that you need, as well as the counts for the Optavia Lean and Green and the macros in case you're on something else and you need to know calories and things like that. Before I show you the ingredients and how to put this together, please let me invite you just to like the video and to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. That lets YouTube know that this is the kind of content that you want to see, and it also lets me know that you are supporting me on my weight loss transformation, and maybe that you want to reach out to get some support on your journey as well. Now, I am going to double the recipe that is in the Optavia app because it will give me some portions to have for to put into the freezer for those grab-and-go meals that I sometimes need to have when my husband's not home. And then I'm also going to take my husband's half and I'm going to add some rice to it because he's not on weight loss. And so this is basically almost like a cabbage roll that's not a cabbage roll. So, or even a stuffed pepper. It's kind of similar to both of those. And because of that, a lot of times cabbage rolls or stuffed peppers have rice in them. So that's why I'm doing that for him. So let me show you the ingredients that I'm going to be using. So the recipe calls for 2 pounds of extra lean ground beef. So I have that ready to go. I'm going to need 4 cups of diced green cabbage. I'm going to need 4 cups, it says red peppers, but I've got the tri-colored peppers and I have 1 green pepper. So I'm just going to do a combination. They weigh the same regardless. And I actually have the ounces instead of the cups listed in the recipe, and I'll talk about that because it's a lot easier to weigh vegetables in ounces than to weigh them in cups, which have negative space and not so great. I'm going to use a can of crushed tomatoes. That's all that's in this can is just crushed tomatoes, so don't get anything that has sugar or seasonings or anything in it. I'm going to use some garlic. That's what I'm throwing in that's a little different. Some oregano, salt, that's pepper, salt, and reduced fat mozzarella cheese. This is the part skim mozzarella, low moisture. Don't get the whole milk mozzarella. You want the one that has the reduced fat. The first step is to go ahead and brown the ground beef. So I'm going to throw that into I'm using a big pot because I'm doubling the recipe and there won't be room enough in my skillet to try to do all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw all of the beef into my pot and get that browning, and I'll be right back. The ground beef is all cooked up, so I'm going to set that aside. I left the drippings inside the pan, and I've weighed out my peppers so I know I have enough peppers to equal the 4 cups that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and chop those up. The 4 cups of peppers comes out to be 21.04 ounces, which is the same thing as 1 pound, 5.04 ounces. So 1 pound and 5 ounces. So about 1 1/4 pounds of peppers. And so I'm just going to chunk those up. And they don't have to be like, I would not worry about the pieces because they're really going to cook down quite a bit. I'll also say the recipe calls for scallions, which I'm pretty sure are just a garnish at the end. And so, and those are counting in as one of the condiments. And I'm gonna leave those off because I added in garlic to the recipe. So I kind of replaced the scallions that are on. So if you look at the recipe on the Optavia app, you'll see that it calls for some green onions or scallions. Just know I just chose to leave that off. I'd rather have the flavor in the casserole itself than have some sort of a garnish on the top at the end. I don't see those as necessary, but you do you. If you want to do that, add those. There's actually only 2 condiments per serving in this recipe anyway, so if you wanted to also add those still, you have plenty of condiment room to add that in at the end if you want to. And then once you have all of the peppers cut up, you can cut up the cabbage. And again, you're just, I'm gonna cut it in one direction. And then I'm gonna cut it in the other direction. You know, I suppose you could probably use a bag of cabbage mix, the slaw mix, if you wanted to do that. The problem with that is that it has carrots in it, and carrots aren't on the Optavia program. So maybe that's why the recipe calls for the actual cabbage and not the slaw mix. And again, I weighed the cabbage out. I needed 12 ounces, actually 12 and a half ounces, and mine was just like 12 and an eighth. So it's a little less cabbage, but I wasn't gonna cut more cabbage just to try to get that. So I'm gonna turn my stove on and get those juices in the bottom of my pan going a little bit more. I'm going to add in my garlic, which is I'm gonna do about a teaspoon of garlic. And then I'm gonna do a teaspoon of black pepper, which is a pretty good amount of pepper. And then let me grab my teaspoon measure so that I can measure out the salt and the oregano. So I need a teaspoon of dried oregano. And I need a teaspoon of salt. And I'm gonna go ahead and toss this in my pot, and then I'm gonna add the can of crushed tomatoes. I'm gonna open up this can of crushed tomatoes. I'm gonna add this in, and then I'm just gonna let this let the vegetables cook down until they're soft, and then I will come back and show you what this looks like before we get it into the oven. The vegetables are done cooking, and I added back in the beef into the pot. So what I'm gonna do is, so that I can make sure that I have the right amount in each one, I'm gonna go ahead and measure how much this all weighs together, and then I can put half in one container and then add the rice and add that to my husband's container. So I'm just gonna measure this out. It's really the only way to make sure that you have it equal. This makes a lot. I had a little visitor, so I had to stop. And so I didn't show you, but I did end up dividing it in half. And I took my half is in this pan, and then I took David's half and I mixed in some leftover rice that I had in the freezer that I just thawed out and threw in there. So his has rice in it. I'm gonna top each one of these with a cup of reduced fat mozzarella cheese. It's gonna go in the oven at 400 for probably maybe 15, 20 minutes, because I'm not going to do this right away. I'm going to pop these in the fridge, so it might take a little bit longer. So they won't be really hot. So probably 15, 20 minutes. I may even put them into the oven without the cheese for about 15 minutes, and then put the cheese on and let it cook for another 15 minutes until the cheese is all melty and bubbly and good. And I'll show you what a serving looks like when I'm done. Each of these pans would be 4 servings. So I'm gonna have 1/4 of this, and that will make my serving for my lean and green. So I will see you back here to show you the finished product and let you know how it tastes. I completely forgot. This is why I don't record these things when my husband's home, because I get distracted and I forget that I'm recording a meal. So I forgot to come back and tell you about, or show you what it looked like. So I'm going to put a picture at the end, like I always do, so that you can see what it looked like. And it was delicious. It came out all bubbly and hot. What I ended up doing was putting it in at 400 for about 30 to 40 minutes. And then I covered it with foil because it had been in the refrigerator. And then I took the foil off and I added the 1 cup of cheese to the top of each one, and then baked it for another 10 minutes and served it up. My husband absolutely loved it. He loves stuffed cabbage rolls and stuffed peppers, so it was right up his alley. It was a great meal, and I hope that you will give this one a try. It's in the Optavia app. So we know that it's Optavia approved. And leave the cheese off if you're Whole30. Add the cheese if you're keto, and enjoy this recipe. Let me know in the comments down below if you make it and what you think of it, and if you have any recipes that you want me to try. Until I see you next time, please live in the light.